bookworms to Tibra's Den. My name is Whitney, and we just read The Four Summoners' Tales, which have four different stories from Kelley Armstrong, Christopher Golden, David Liss, and Jonathan Maberry. This book was so good. I'm going to get into my thoughts on this in just a second, but as a reminder, if you're not already, please subscribe, hit the bell notification, and give this video a like. Really helps grow this channel, and I'm doing a lot of exciting stuff that I want to share with everybody. So please help me grow this channel. And yeah, just a reminder, we do a series Saturday, and we're currently reading the Dresden Files series. We are on the third book, just about to finish that up this coming Saturday. We also do Book of the Month every Monday, and so this month we are reading The Ring by Danielle Steel. Book of the Month introductory video for November should be up sometime this week. I'm not quite sure if it might already be up or if it's coming, but definitely keep an eye out for that. I'm really excited for November's Book of the Month. And then we also, of course, do our weekly reads, and then we do a Throwback Thursday where I cover favorites from my childhood, and that's been a lot of fun. There's also a bonus video coming out at some point. Again, I don't know when, so you'll definitely want to be subscribed if you want to catch that. But I did do a bookshelf tour, so hopefully you'll join me as I walk around and show you my bookshelf and kind of how they're laid out. But yeah, before we get into For Summoner's Tale, just a reminder, this week we are going to be reading Gail Wilson Boogeyman. You can find my thoughts on this next Wednesday. And then next Wednesday, I did introduce this book in Monday's video, and I read the synopsis and everything in case you want to see that. But next Wednesday, we are going to be reading First to Die by James Patterson. So really excited to tuck into both of these. Again, I hope you will join us. As always, doesn't hurt to check your local library to see if some of these books are there if you do want to participate. And then if you don't mind not having a physical copy, Kindle or audiobook are also a great way to participate in our weekly reads or any of our other reads that we do as well. I have to have a physical copy, but again, you can check your local library, see if they might have it before you run out and buy it. But if you're interested in getting it, the links are down in the description below as well. So let's go ahead and talk about The Four Summoners' Tale. I'm going to use the back to keep myself on track. And so like I said, there's four different stories by four different authors, but they all had the same premise. And I'm going to go ahead and read that now for you. So I think it was, let's see here. So it was Christopher Golden and Jonathan Maberry's idea, and then they brought in David Liss and Kelley Armstrong into the mix to be the the two other writers rather. But the whole premise was a strange visitor comes to town, offering to raise the townsfolk's dearly departed from the dead for a price. And so that was the premise they had to work off of. And the first one is by Kelley Armstrong. It's called Suffer the Children. And basically, there is the main characters are a girl named Addie who was adopted by a preacher and his wife who is a school teacher. But the whole thing is the preacher is not actually a preacher. He is also a school teacher, but the town where they went don't have a need for two school teachers, but they did need a preacher, and so he essentially got put in that position because he could read the Bible. And so they ended up having an outbreak of diphtheria, and some elderly died, but like 26 children died as well. And so it starts off with Addie in the woods because she kind of was raised to kind of live off the land and such and be really sneaky. And she sees these two men coming into town, so she goes and warns her father. And she's like, well, her adopted father, she kind of had a tragedy with her own parents. And so she's kind of very distrustful, but she's like, they don't look right. Like there's something wrong with them. And so his father's like, they're probably snake oil peddlers. Like, and so he goes and he tries to warn the mayor, but the mayor has lost a child. There's like four men on the council: the mayor, the preacher, the blacksmith and the doctor, and they've all lost either children or grandchildren. And so, at first the mayor's like, yeah, 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 but then the guy starts talking. He's like, well, we'll leave if you don't want us here. And it's a younger guy and an older gentleman who can like barely walk. And he's like, we'll leave if you don't want us here, but please hear us out. Like, let's go in private and talk. And so, of course, they've all lost people. And so they're starting to tell them, like, we can raise, any kids that have been less than 4 days, dead less for 4 days. Which fortunately, the mayor's son has been dead less than 4 days. One of the sons from the other, I don't remember who has a grandson and who has a kid, but I think the blacksmith, it's his kid, his boy. His daughter also died, but she's been dead a lot longer. So he's like, my boy has, and then the doctor, I think his grandchild, has been dead less than 4 days. So there's like 7 children in total. And so they're like, our normal fee is $1,000, but since there's so many dead, like we'll drop it down to 300. Which in this day and age, like I want to say it's like the 1700s, maybe 1800s. I can't remember exactly when it took place, but that's a lot of money. And so they drop it down to 300, and there's another price, so somebody else has to give their life. And conveniently, the old man volunteers for this because he's lived his days and blah 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 blah. But there's a twist with that. And so essentially the old man, they're like, well, the first child we will do free of charge, and Renee, who's the old man, will volunteer to be, sacrifice himself for the child, but the rest of you are on your own to find sacrifices. So basically the child gets raised, but Addie notices something's not right. Like he doesn't recognize her because her and the mayor's son were really good friends. And she's like, there's something wrong. Like he doesn't recognize me. He doesn't recognize this. And they just keep telling, it's just, he's confused. He's confused. Um, so anyway, they end up deciding all their elderly had already died. And so they didn't have any elderly to volunteer. And so they decide that they're gonna kill off the outcast for the sacrifices necessary to raise the other children. And so yeah, it's this whole big thing. And like I said, there is a twist, which I'm not gonna reveal here just in case you want to read it. But it's basically a big mess, and so 7 children get raised, but it's a huge mess. Really was enjoyable. Like I really enjoyed the whole story. And then the next one is Pipers by Christopher Golden. And this one deals with it's a drug cartel. It's a Texas border town, and they're dealing with the drug cartel. And this one has twists too. And this one was all of these were really enjoyable. I like this one slightly better than the first one, but I mean they're just so different. But basically, in this one, it's again a small town, and it starts off with a father and his daughter. He had already lost his wife to cancer, and so it's just him and his, I think she's like 13 or 14, or maybe about to be 14. And it's just him and her, and they're going into town because their small town is hosting their first musical festival. And so it's like a big deal, and a lot of people are going to be there, for a small town. Like there's like a couple hundred people, but that's a lot for them. And it's basically there's a bunch of ranchers, and they formed, this group, this volunteer group, and they're reporting the drug cartel to the authorities because they don't like the drug trade going through their lands and such. And so anyway, it kind of backfires, and the drug cartel ends up driving through town during the music festival and killing a bunch of people, including the 14-year-old. And so then there's this guy, and he comes and he volunteers. He's like, I'll raise the dead for you, but his price is revenge. So he's like, I need you to use your dead to help me exact revenge on the main guy that's the drug cartel, because he, killed my daughter too, but in a much more brutal manner. And so that's the whole premise. They raise the dead, but they're dead. They have to play like these flutes to control them because they're like essentially just zombies, but with no like animation or whatsoever. But they eventually heal and become human again. Um, it's kind of a cool little premise that he did. But anyway, that whole thing, the whole revenge thing ends up backfiring, and there's a couple twists in there that that were really enjoyable. And so that's the whole premise of that one. The next one is A Bad Season for Necromancy, and this one's by David Liss. And this one is set like farther back. Like I think this one was like maybe I don't even know the time frames, but it's set farther back than the first one in time. And so basically in this one you have a guy, and his father's a drunkard and likes to just sleep around with whores. And so I mean, I use that word because that's how it's phrased in the book. Like I said, very old, but like set in very olden days. So anyway, so he ends up stealing from his father. His father wakes up and goes to attack him, and he hits him with a hammer. And then he decides his father has stolen the money to begin with, but he decides to take his small fortune, and he's gonna take that, and he's gonna pass off as a wealthy gentleman and try to marry a wealthy lady, so that way he has money and he's kind of set for life. So he's kind of like the scoundrel guy. So he's doing really well, and he targets these four widows. He decides, you know what, like I'm gonna target them, but he ends up falling for one of the widows, and he almost has her, and his father shows up. So that's kind of a twist, but not a big one. And his father shows up and kind of ruins everything. And so that's where the premise comes into play, because he is from out of town, and he decides he's gonna raise the four widows. He's gonna threaten them, but not the one he loves. But there's also another guy who's has his eye on the widows there too. And so he threatens them and is like, "You're gonna pay me to not raise the dead." So he kind of flopped that, which was really really cool. Um, and then it kind of all backfires and turns on him, and there's again some twists that go along with that, and it kind of fully backfires on him. But that one does have a happy ending. So really enjoyed that one as well. Like I said, it's just the different time frames and like the different scenes that are painted using the same premise was really enjoyable. And then we have the last book, who this one is A Live Day by Jonathan Maberry, and he took the premise and completely did something different with it. So in his book, I guess he used one of the characters from one of like his series that he writes. Um and he does that, and let me see if I can remember the name. Like it's Captain somebody. So I can remember. I mean, there was a lot that went on to this. But yeah, so he used his the main guy from his actual series, which I think was really cool because he's obviously developed this character a lot. So he's very familiar with the character. And so I think it added a certain depth to this one. And so I think because of that, and because it was so different from the other three, I think A Live Day was definitely my favorite. But Captain Joe Ledger, which is the lead character from a series of science slash action thrillers, um, is who he uses for this book. So basically, you have two separate teams that are kind of members of like an elite squad. Like it's called DMS, which is Department of Military Science or something. Um, and they handle things that kind of need to stay off the books essentially. So they're not really military, they're not really like CIA or anything like that, but it kind of goes along with that. Like he used to be an army ranger, and he was a part of the Baltimore Police Department too after that, and now he's part of this group. And so there's different groups within the group. And so the first group, Rattlesnake, gets sent on this mission, and again you're dealing with like drug cartel, you're dealing with the Taliban over in Afghanistan, and so they are actually the strangers coming to the land, but they're not the ones that are raising the dead. So like I said, he twisted it completely, and I absolutely loved what he did with the story. And so he goes, and his team is Echo. Joe Ledger's team is Echo, and so they're trying to go find Rattlesnake because Rattlesnake's not dead. They have like these microchips in their arm that kind of track them, and it says like when it shows they're dead, you're just they cover up. Like they cover it up like you're just gone. You were never on record, like you just don't exist anymore. But this team is still showing alive, so they have to go in and try to do some recon and figure out what's going on and what happened with the mission and everything like that, because they're kind of worried that the Taliban's, using drugs, but is hiding like a bioweapon within the drugs essentially. Um and so it's him and two of his men are going in to find this team of four, which is Rattlesnake. And so it's going back and forth between the viewpoints. And I like with Rattlesnake, like it went back to like day 10, when they were first, doing the mission and such, and then it kind of built up to where they're at now, which was really, really enjoyable. And then also it's going back and forth through the viewpoints of the team that's now searching for them. And like I said, it just switches and it has like this ancient evil that is the one that's raising the dead, and they have to bargain for their dead, and it's just what he did with the premise was my favorite. Like I said, it was so vastly different from the other ones, and he really twisted it around. I don't know that he necessarily followed the rules per se, but I mean, the premise was still there and it was really enjoyable. And like I said, he was using a character that he's already very familiar with because it's a character from his normal series and such that he writes. So, absolutely. I mean, all of them were really good, but Alive Day, and I'm not really into like military books per se. They're not necessarily my favorite books to read or anything like that. But this one was so enjoyable, and I like the premise of like an ancient evil and everything like that. Like, just so good. But all four of these were really good. And so, if you like kind of like spooky, paranormal, thriller reads, I think you would really enjoy this book. And they're all the different stories are so vastly different while still using the same premise. But like I said, Alive Day was definitely my favorite. So I would strongly recommend this one. I think, oh, I'm just so hesitant to give any of the books I read 5 stars. Like, I'm waiting for a book to really wow me, but I think I am gonna give this one 5 stars because I loved it. It's one, I might not necessarily read all four stories every time I pick it up, but I might pick it up and read one or another or, a couple of them. But it is one I'm gonna revisit a lot. So, you can check my website and it'll have like the final, maybe not, this week, but in the next couple weeks it will have the final score. I have a page called Shelved Books where I just kind of do like a little small review. Obviously I'm giving my thoughts here, but I just do a small review and rate them. And so you can see what I end up deciding to rate this, whether it's 4 or 5 within the next couple weeks. But really, really enjoyed this, and I see others really enjoying this as well. And I'm really excited to check out some of the works by these authors, like some of their actual works. I'm definitely going to be doing that. So, yeah, strongly recommend this one. I think I rambled on enough about this though. This video is getting quite long. Again, remember today we are going to be starting Boogeyman by Gail Wilson. Definitely hope you will enjoy me for this one. And if you don't, check out my thoughts next week so you can see if it's something that you might be interested in. I'm going to leave you here. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.